Yeah, but so I'm here to talk about the botanical garden side of the Cincinnati Zoo, and we're very proud of it. We've had some exciting news this year, and thrilled to be able to pass that along to you. So we'll get right into it. You know, I think it's very possible there's no community in America or maybe the world that treasures its zoo like Cincinnati does. You know, every time one of those USA Today lists come up, you vote for your favorite zoo. Cincinnati's right up there, and we are a good zoo. We deserve credit, but I think those are basically popularity contests and who has the best fandom in their community. And we're always up there with much bigger communities and much bigger zoos. Thane Maynard, our director, likes to call us the little zoo that could, and I think it pretty much describes us well. Most people don't know we were the first zoo to charter in the United States, 1873. Second, unfortunately, to open. Philadelphia got there first. But we opened in 1875 as the Cincinnati Zoological Gardens. And we've received a couple things. I'll talk about those later. The designer, or one of the principal designers of the zoo, was also the same man that designed Spring Grove Cemetery and Arboretum, Adolf Strauch. He was a Bavarian, basically landscape architect. That term wasn't used at the time, but that's what he was in essence. Classically trained in horticulture and gardening in Europe, and then he just by chance missed a train connection in Cincinnati, wound up staying here and developing the Park District in Cincinnati, which is one of the best in the country, Spring Grove, which is outstanding, the zoo, and a lot of the private properties in Clifton and around Cincinnati. When they were proposing or designing the way the zoo would look, he wrote, "An experimental garden might be most advantageously combined, which would contribute much to the attractiveness of the place and minister in no small degree to the public taste." So already he was thinking about what plants to use there, what to try, and by trying different plants that we would somehow dictate, convey to the public what works here, what looks beautiful, what functions well, and would make our communities better. Somewhere along the line, that mission got lost, and when I'm, no offense, but you're an older group. I'm older too. Anytime I talk to an older group, or especially if a group comes and tours the zoo, I hear over and over and over again, man, all I remember is concrete and hot from when we visited as kids. So somewhere along the way, we lost the mission of being a botanical garden. Kind of fell into the pattern of a lot of zoos, a lot of pathways, bars, concrete, heat, misery. This is Steve Foltz. He's a friend of Dave's. His predecessor was Dave Erlanger. I could not find a picture of him. I didn't work with him. But he started kind of crumbling the concrete. Dave Erlanger did. Kind of mixing plants back into the landscape, removing some of the excess hardscapes, sort of making the zoo a better experience, a more natural experience. And then Steve really, he's been director now since about the 80s, mid 80s, I think, and he has carried that forward in a very strong way. So if you haven't been to the zoo in a long time, you really need to come and have a look at it. It's changed, it's way more comfortable. We have a lot of shade, trees, beautiful landscapes and so forth. And much of the credit goes to Steve. In '87, we changed the name of the zoo from the Zoological Gardens. I think it had just become the Cincinnati Zoo to the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden when we got Botanical Garden accreditation from the American Association of Museums. It's a weird group to get your accreditation from, but it was the only game in town at that time. And if you think about it, a public garden or a botanical garden and a museum, a lot of it's the same stuff. You're accessioning materials, you have plans for displaying things, lots of plans like just how you run and organize the business. This year, we applied for and received the highest level of Arboretum accreditation in the world, ArbNet Level 4. This is quite an accomplishment. Give you an idea, I whipped this together really fast this morning, so some things don't make sense. But you might ask, okay, so how does a zoo get the highest accreditation for an arboretum that you can get? You know, everybody thinks of Fiona and monkeys and waffle fries and things of that, like at the zoo. But this really is a big accomplishment. There are 2,340 arboreta listed globally with or without accreditation. 628 arboreta throughout the world with some level of accreditation. Now, with the ArbNet levels, 1, there are 349. At level 2, 193. At level 4, or 3, 45. And at level 4, where we are, just 41 in the world. 3 in Ohio, Dawes Arboretum, Holden Arboretum, and us. Only 9 zoos in the world with any level of accreditation. We're the only one at level 4. So this is huge. This is quite an accomplishment. It's quite a recognition of all the work we've done across the field, both with plant collections all the way through to data collection, data sharing, conservation, research, education, and beyond. So you might think, okay, Cincinnati Zoo, we know you for tulips, Fiona and tulips, right? And the 100,000 tulip display that we do every year is phenomenal. It's a crowd-pleasing blast of color when we need it the most. It's fantastic, but it doesn't score you a whole lot of points in the botanical garden or arboreta accreditation world. It's sort of the cheesy crowd pleaser type of thing. It's a very good one, and I love it. But that's kind of how it's looked at. It's like, well, this isn't serious horticulture. This is just, doing something fun and beautiful, bringing the crowds in. And you might see that also said somewhat about our other seasonal display, which are the annuals, which follow the tulips. So the tulips go in October. We pull them in May. Annuals go right back in where the tulips were. They perform all winter or all summer into October, and then we start the whole process over again. It's a lot of work, but it does have a lot of rewards. But again, annuals in the botanical garden world are kind of, a lesser thing. And it's a shame because they can bring so much to landscapes, gardens, the environment, but they're kind of just sort of recognized as grandma gardening or easy homeowner gardening. It's not really right, but that's the way it is. But we are probably the largest garden display of annuals in the country. So we plan out 700 varieties. We planted out 700 varieties of annuals this year, well over 60,000 plants. And there are trial gardens for annuals at growers and at universities. They line them out. It's, in rows. It's not artistically done. We do ours as displays. And it's being recognized because this year, all the breeders, or many of the best breeders, marketers, growers of annuals in the country are coming to the zoo on August 30th to have a breeder showcase, to see what we've done, see how it's been, how we've used the plants, and frankly, to take pictures, to promote, and, learn from the plantings. So that's kind of a big achievement. So the annual trialing, which began in 2002 and has grown substantially since then, was our first step into formal plant trialing. But since then, we have trialed everything that we can, trees, shrubs, all the way down to vines, ground covers, perennials. And a lot of the information that we've learned, we've shared the best way we can, coming to events like this, putting out our brochure series, putting a lot of information on our website. We speak at big conferences, we do publications and so forth. So, this is a One of the things that got us really good recognition with the ArbNet people was the amount of plant knowledge that we've acquired and our ability to share it. Part of that means keeping records. We have an extensive plant record system and approximately over 3,000 accessions of different plants, species, or varieties of species. We also share that data with other arboreta, other botanical gardens. We were one of the first gardens in the country to have a native plant program, way ahead of the curve on that one. And that has morphed into a native plant nursery out in Warren County, where we grow and sell some hard to find, very cool native plants. And also where we've used a lot of those plants on this farm, where we've broken the drain tiles of an old farm, and it has reverted back to wetland status. We also do quite a lot of pollinator research. Pollinators, the perfect interface between plants at the zoo, or the botanical garden side of the zoo, and the animal part of the zoo. That's where kind of like life really happens, the baselines of ecosystems. Plants attract the insects, insects attract the birds, you know, and then you get mammals, and then you get predators, and that's how an ecosystem happens. It's that interaction between plants and animals. And what better way to tell that story than with pollinators, which are in crisis. So we're able to show people which plants are best to grow and for pollinators. And then launch a program called Plant for Pollinators, where you can register your own garden and show that it's part of the community of gardens for pollinators. By the way, we do a little monarch festival in the fall, and the little kids come and do a parade in costume. It's one of the coolest things. So on the right, we have a picture of one of the part of the wetland restoration out at Beuerlein Farm in Warren County, which is really kind of cool. Not only did we replant a lot of the species that have been lost over the years, but just by breaking the tiles and allowing water to collect, species just somehow reemerged after hundreds of years, over 100 years, being a farm. Bird species that are coming are off the charts. It's remarkable how many birds are coming. Now, part of the zoo is CREW, and a lot of people don't know much about CREW, Center for Research of Endangered Wildlife. And a lot of what they do is freeze and cryogenically preserve, you know, animal tissues, semen, eggs, but they are also, maybe more so, are saving seeds of endangered plants or parts of meristematic tissue of plants, so for further regeneration, for preservation, especially with plants that are on the edge of extinction. So that's a big part of what we do, and they tend to be forgotten, which is a shame. We're very involved with the community. About 10 years ago, we got involved with the Cincinnati Reds Community Fund, which does a community makeover every year. And let me show you, here we go. Each year they pick a community in a challenged neighborhood. They restore ball fields, rec centers. They do a lot of good community work. When we joined, we started to add a horticultural component. At first it was usually putting in some trees because shade is so important. And then it just kind of grew from that to the point where in 2021, we did Rockdale Academy. That's a K-6 school, 2 blocks from the zoo in Avondale, rough part of town. It's not uncommon to hear gunfire when you're there. Every kid in the school is on a free lunch program. It's a challenged neighborhood. It's a great school. The principal and the teaching staff are amazing, and they're doing great stuff. But they had a 2-acre patch of grass, site of the old school, basically rubble covered with little, like that much soil and grass, which between the Reds, their partners, and us, we we turned it into a two-acre mini botanic garden of unbelievable numbers of plants, and it's a great joy to work with the kids at the school. One of the things that's really great about this is you hear a lot of these community gardens, oh, let's go do a community garden. And oftentimes, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, really, but a lot of times these gardens look like shanty towns. They're put in with, for vegetable growing, sticks, ropes, strings, they just look like hideous. And we have the vegetables, we have the fruits, we have herb gardens and production facilities, but it's also a very beautiful garden, and the community has really accepted it, and the school has really been overjoyed with having it there, and frankly, we like having it there too. These are some scenes of that garden, some pictures of the Rockdale garden. But anyway, we've done that same thing on a much smaller scale, but on all these other locations for RED's foundation programs. And those are volunteers. The top picture from Children's Hospital, they're one of the partners at Rockdale a couple years ago. There's part of our motley looking crew of horticulturists in Roselawn from 2018. So what is a botanical garden? Why do they matter? Well, we know that better landscapes and gardens improve our homes, neighborhoods, communities. Don, where'd you go, Don? Oh, there you are. So you invited me and then walked out? What? Which homes sell better? The ones with nice landscaping or those that don't?
Oh, there's no question. If you have a home that's nicely landscaped, it'll sell, and probably for a lot more money than the one down the street that looks.
And when you drive through a neighborhood with lots of homes that are beautifully landscaped, how does that make you feel compared to one that isn't? It's night and day. Drive through an old neighborhood like Hyde Park with big trees. It gives you that feeling right from the beginning. It could be a busy street, but you go back into the neighborhoods and those old homes with those beautiful landscapes, you see what? You see people out. You see them talking to each other, exercising, kids playing in the yard. You go through neighborhoods with none of that, with just sun-bleached, blank slate landscapes. It's a no man's land. So we know gardens make homes better. Lots of homes with good gardens make neighborhoods better, communities better. This improves our health, and it also creates a patchwork of lots of different plants, lots of different materials that create an ecosystem that is good for the environment. Botanical gardens inspire and educate green industry professionals and gardeners to begin that process to make more and better gardens. So just a few pictures of the botanical side of the zoo. I hope you will come and see all that we offer. Check us out for materials on the best plants to use. So this is all on our website. We are the leader in horticulture in this area. We're very fortunate to have a lot of good horticulture in this area. There's no question that we are at the center of that. And I say that with great pride. So I will be glad to take any questions. Yeah.
What's the size of your workforce?
We have 13 full-time employees, 2 of which are off-site, a third that's sort of half off-site. So we have 2 out at the Boyer farm, and then we have 1 who is sort of committed to Rockdale. But since that's close, he kind of bounces back and forth, and so do we. So we have 12 full-time staff. In the summer, we'll probably have between 12 and 20 part-time or seasonal help. And then we get a lot of volunteer help. Our own committed, zoo hort volunteers, which are great. And then we have a woman at the zoo who does a great job of bringing in corporate groups. So 3 days a week, sometimes we'll get 12 to 20 corporate volunteers to come and mulch or pull weeds. It helps a lot. Yes.
Is there any time of the year that it's better to come and see, because the botanical garden slightly different than the rest?
It's one of the best things about a botanical garden is it's always changing. So the tulips are just incredibly beautiful. Try to come early or later in the day to see with the light, the backlighting, and then there's, right along with the tulips and into, May and June, you get the early blooming shrubs and trees. And then you get into the annuals. Right now they're at their peak. Then fall color. And then there's, we have the Festival of Lights, which is worth coming to, but, Cincinnati in the winter isn't the best. So, from a botanical garden side, the time not to come is probably December through the end of March. But yeah, yes.
Two things. Rotary International Foundation, its very big push is on a pollination garden.
Yeah.
So what would it take to partner with the Reds Fund, you to put one together in Northern Kentucky here in the city of Florence?
That's a great question. Pollinator gardens are pretty much, the funny thing is, it's become these two things, gardens and then pollinator gardens, when a really well-made garden is by default going to be a pollinator garden. So that end of it, you can take any garden you do and call it a pollinator garden. You can steer it, focus it on more on pollinator plants, and that's easy to do and something we do a lot of. As for getting the Reds to do something in Northern Kentucky, the project 2 years ago was in Bellevue, the Veterans or VFW Hall in Bellevue. But I don't know how they get determine the locations they're going to do every year. But they are the ones who make that decision.
In the way, there's some great money available for soil conservation. We got a grant to do some pollinator work before.
Okay, so there's plenty of resources out there to put something like this together.
And there's nothing that just a vibrant pollinator garden. That's a lot of what we saw in the pictures from Rockdale. There's nothing that just lifts you automatically faster than just this exuberant collage of colors and flowers from perennials and things.
Second thing, we were on vacation last year and we met this couple and, the niceties. Oh, where are you from? Oh, we live about Cincinnati. They literally lost their mind. They were like, and you guys ever, you guys rode that way just as,
it could have. They handled it brilliantly, and it could have gone so much worse. That followed, if you remember, on the heels of Harambe, which was a disaster. And here you get a hippo born a month or two more premature, 6 weeks, at less than half the weight of any viable birth. And you decide to go straight onto social media with the whole story. That was a bold decision on somebody's part, but one that paid off because it gave the world that incredibly uplifting, wonderful story. And just by the fact that she grew up basically in the arms of zookeepers 24/7 for the first month or three of her life, she thinks she's a human and she's got all kinds of sass. She's the best spokeswoman you could possibly ever have for a zoo. So that's amazing stuff. And then, all the cookies, the beers, the ice creams, the trinkets, T-shirts, books. I never saw a bonus from any of that money, but.
Well, it's not a question, but I was at the zoo last Tuesday. Some friends of ours came from England, and we took them to the zoo, and then two friends from Columbus, and two of them are master gardeners, and they were just amazed at the flowers.
Oh.
They were beautiful last week. And,
Yeah.
And like you said, it was a hot day. It was 88 degrees, but it was not bad because there's so much shade over the walkways that are still there. And I took two pictures. I think one of Fiona and family, and one of the new gorillas that were there. And all the rest of my pictures were flowers.
I love that because when I spoke at the Master Gardeners International Conference in Kansas City last spring, and there's Master Gardeners from all over the world, and people are coming right and left to me that hey, yeah, I love your zoo, you know, and you're like, well, where are you from? In Florida or Denver or what, you know, people really have come to know about our zoo from Fiona mostly, but when they come, they're really blown away by the plants. And one of the things I like to point out in my longer talks is that, you know, apart from Fiona, the Kodak moments with kids are always done in the gardens. You know, the kids are parked in front of a display and their pictures are taken. And it doesn't happen with the animals especially, but it's, you know, some about the plants and the beauty of the gardens that those become the Kodak moments. So,
It was spectacular last week. It really was.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.